last week we talked all about your live stuff. I'm very interested in your American adventure. You went off to America. You did The Tick, which I hadn't seen, but I watched.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, some fan. I watched. I was sort of fed up of superhero stuff, I have to say. So I didn't watch The Tick, but I watched some of it today.
Oh yeah.
And it's very different than most superheroes.
Yeah, it is very different. Yeah,
it's great.
I think it was the script of the pilot episode. I thought was, I hate reading scripts, and I thought it was brilliant. I was like, wow, this character is like. I later realized the writer Ben Edlund, who's written the character and drawn him since like 1986, has ADHD, as I found out that I had ADHD about 10 years ago, and it's like with him, he's like really, I mean, I think I am, but like he is like, he and The Tick is kind of, I realized like, is like a metaphor for ADHD, is like an embodiment of that type of brain, you know, and so when I got that part, that was like the biggest "be careful what you wish for" lesson I've ever had in my life. Yeah, because like, so I was offered this part, didn't have to audition for it. The creator Ben, who's just such a clever and lovely guy, he wrote to me this lovely letter saying, "Dear Peter, I'd be honored to." I mean, the way he writes, his wordplay is like these puns that look like Mobius strips. You know, it's like you don't realize that wordplay has occurred until, you know, I don't know. He's amazing. It was like, so I had this amazing script, and I met the cast. The guy who played Arthur, my sidekick, but who's really the star of the show, is this guy Griffin Newman, who's like such a brilliant, funny actor, and who does this podcast Blank Check as well about movies. And anyway, everyone on this cast was like, they were really cool. I loved them all. Such nice people. The whole production was great. It was like, but I hated doing it because the suit I had to wear was so uncomfortable.
Right.
Like it's not just like an uncomfortable garment. This thing was like, I was encased in plastic, my whole body, and I couldn't hear anything. The only bits of skin that were exposed were around my eyes, around my mouth. And so it made me realize how much you rely on like your arm hairs to like navigate the world, you know?
Like a cat with
like
whiskers.
A cat would do, or a human.
Right.
So it's all these things like I had these antennae that moved and emoted when I talked, and it was really cool. They were puppeteered by this puppeteer she's from the Muppet, the Jim Henson workshop, and she had a whole book of emotions. It was like a kind of dictionary of like what ticks if he was feeling anxious or tired. There were different like antennae things. It was so cool, but they had to have this motor in my helmet, and the motor had to be powered, and then there was a steel rods would come down from the back of my helmet down into a battery pack that was in the small of my back. And that was all built into the suit. So it was a two-part thing that was just attached, and I was just in it, and I couldn't get out of it, and I couldn't really move my neck. And then also I couldn't hear anything. So they put a microphone in my chest, and that fed a pair of earphones in my ears, but I was getting like not stereo sound like a normal human being is used to. It's like just this one little microphone on my chest. So I was bumping into things, and like I couldn't really hear properly as well, because when they would turn the motors on for the antennae, and then the motors would interfere with the frequency of the thing, and so I'd have the actual sound of the, and then I would have in my ears, and I would have to lip read what people were saying because I couldn't hear them. It was crazy. And then the costume, it was like, because they only had one, and it cost like about $1 million, right? It was, they could only fix it when it was a day off, which was like 2 days every fortnight, and it didn't fit me, and it was like, I was full of bruises. I got dehydrated. I ended up having a kidney stone because I was dehydrated so much, because this thing would heat me up. Oh my God, it was awful. Wow. This costume, it was awful. And it was so sad because, like, the show, I loved everything else about it except that, you know.
Yeah, except the main thing.
Yeah, but like I filmed. I'm doing this
happiness.
But it's like I'm the star of this show. It's like I'm on posters, and like I'm filming it in New York, which is like my favorite place in the entire world. Yeah. And yeah. Just be careful what you wish for.
So were you quite relieved when it only got 2 series?
Honestly, yeah. Honestly, I can feel, as you said that, I can feel the relief, and I honestly get a very deep... I went to New York, we filmed it all in New York, and I went to New York about a couple of months after I'd had the news that we weren't doing the series anymore, and as we were coming into land, I started having a panic attack, and I was looking out the window, and I had to sort of talk to myself and say, hey, it's okay. We're not doing that show anymore. It's okay. We're all right. We can. So like now, it's like as an actor, I never complain about clothes, cause like about costume, or I don't want to wear this, or like I used to. I was never been one of those people, but like, it's just, you know, as long as I'm dressed like a human, dude, that'll do me.
If it's about ADHD, isn't that the kind of thing that's terrible for ADHD, having a very clingy?
It is.
So do you think that was a way to really heighten the character of the thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think unintentionally, you know, I had these big like boots on that I would waddle around and bump into things, and I would walk from I'd get my makeup done. It was like this corridor in the studio that had like, it was like the air vents, and there were all these kind of pipes and like things going across, and I would routinely I would come out the makeup thing, and I would walk along and I'd hook my antennae on this. I mean, I was constantly injuring myself, and like, oh, it was awful. But yeah.
I'm glad I don't get any acting jobs now.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't even get to the audition place. Look, you were also in... Look, you were in like the greatest episode probably of what I considered at the time to be the greatest cartoon sitcom, is Rick and Morty. So you're in the Pickle Rick episode.
Okay,
of Rick and Morty.
Pickle Rick. I've never seen the show. No, I've never.
You've been in it like you were in two. You're in another episode. You came.
I was in another episode. I never saw that one either, Richard.
Pickle Rick is like absolutely the peak of. They couldn't follow.
So I'm told.
And
I've even seen a T-shirt with it on.
Yeah.
Richard.
I had a Pickle Rick notebook actually for part of this a few years ago. It's interesting, Rick and Morty, because there was a point when it would come on British TV, but it would be a day or two after America, and I was so obsessed with it. Chris Evans, not that one, who's behind this podcast Empire, would send me an illegal copy of Rick and Morty because we had to see it as soon as possible. Okay. And I've been rewatching it with my wife, and it's sort of season 4 onwards. I realised I hadn't even watched a couple of them before. So I've never loved... It was my favourite show. I still like it, but I've never fallen out of love with some things that I was so obsessed with. It's really interesting. And it's before all the controversy about the guy. But, but I'd be very... If I was you, I'd be so excited about being in Pickle Rick.
Would you?
Yeah.
I'm not.
You don't care.
No, I am. I am. It's lovely, you know. It's lovely. I'll get round to it one day. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know if I don't like the style of the characters.
Right.
it's just I don't really dig that style, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things vying for my attention.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was. I think the first few seasons were very witty, and then it becomes a lot more style over content, and it becomes a bit too wrapped up in itself. So it's a bit hard to follow. I think is the problem. But at that point, you're very good in it. Anyway, well done, Peter. Congratulations. More excitingly, you were the sommelier in John Wick 2.
Yep.
Did you get killed?
No, I didn't. So I'm the sommelier. I'm like the resident arms dealer in the basement of this hotel, this assassin hotel, and it's like I have this. It's like a cellar full of guns, but it's like a wine cellar, but it's not wine. Those aren't wines on the shelves. They're guns and rifles, and they were all real guns. Have you seen the scene? And it was the hardest dialogue I've ever had to learn. In the scene, I'm talking about guns as if they're fine wines, and like, or how about this Beretta with the .38, blah blah blah, and then that's the gag, right? And like, oh my God, these are just words, right? And like, and it was so difficult. Like while I'm doing that, like in contrast to that, as with each gun that I'm trying to sell, Keanu picks up the gun and strips it completely, and then puts it back together again, and then holds it like 2 inches from my face, right? And he does that every time, like perfectly, and I'm like fucking up my lines every sort of 4 or 5 words, and it's so embarrassing, you know, when you get into a loop of that and you think. And Keanu's like, he was like so professional. He's like the nicest dude. He really is. Like, honestly, you can just tell this guy's like a proper fucking dude, and he takes his work seriously, and he's great. And like, and even when, so we shot like his way, and so the camera's looking at him, and as he's doing all this gun stuff, and then it comes on to me, so he doesn't have to do all that shit, you know. He can I can pretend that, you know, for this, because we don't see him, and that's what actors usually do, but he did it anyway, right. Just to keep him there, because he's a professional, you know. And yeah, and I was just thinking, dude, I'm not being very professional today, you know. He's like, look at what he's doing, and I can't remember whether it's a .38 or a .44 caliber kind of. Anyway, you know. Yeah, so I don't know. There isn't really a funny ending to that story.
Then I was fired from the film.
Yeah,
and they brought in someone else.
Well, I wasn't asked back for the number 3 or 4. No,
it's very violent, John Wick.
Is it really?
It's a very violent. Have you watched the John Wick films?
I watched a bit of the first one, and then I've seen a bit of that scene.
There's a lot of people getting shot in the head.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean a lot. It seems to be the plot. He's very good at shooting. They all get shot in the head. So
really?
It's just. If you like seeing that for 2 hours, it's the best film in the world.
All those families.
It is. You have to think.